Hello everyone, today is 20th of January. My name is Sahil and welcome to the newspaper analysis. Now guys, first of all, let's have a look on today's GS folder. So today we will be taking a quote from the Norman Cousins, who is an American political thinker. He had described democracy. He says in a democracy, the individual enjoys not only the ultimate power, but carries the ultimate responsibility. Now, guys, this particular quote correlates to the idea that a democracy is not only that a person has the rightful right, but it also having the rightful duties. And this particular realization amongst the people of democracy makes a democracy a real and progressive political system. Guys, you can utilize this particular quote and this particular idea into your GS paper number 2 answers related to a political idea of democracy, as well as into the essays also you can utilize this particular idea. So guys, that is for the today's GS folder, and now let's take the newspaper analysis in detail. Now, guys, taking up the first article. So, this article has been taken from the Indian Express as well as the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about the vaccine diplomacy that India is going to pursue. And this particular theme can be utilized into the answers related to the GS paper number 2, International Relation, India's Emerging Foreign Policy. Now, guys, into the past few months, we have seen many of the words. For example, there was first the phenomenon of vaccine nationalism that was going on under the spirit of vaccine nationalisms. The countries, particularly the rich countries such as UK, US, Germany, they were signing the pre-purchase agreements with the pharmaceutical firms, and they were basically trying to hoard the vaccines for their own citizens. Guys, into this particular aftermath, now India has also developed the vaccine, but India is not going with the philosophy of vaccine nationalism. Rather, India is taking forward the vaccine diplomacy, where the India is expecting to supply the vaccines to the neighboring countries. Now, guys, into the first tranche, two countries have been identified, that is the Bhutan, which will be receiving the first shipment of the Covishield vaccine, and then, guys, even the Maldives is also expected to receive the shipment of the vaccine today. Into the mean course of time, India is also exploring to give the vaccine to the neighboring countries. Now, guys, as of now, the Pakistan has not given any kind of request, and it is expected that the Pakistan will be receiving their share of vaccine under the Gavi or the COVAX facility. Now, guys, if you don't know, basically Gavi is a not-for-profit organization which contains the public as well as private organizations, and they make the efforts to provide the vaccines available to the developing and underdeveloped countries. Guys, the organizations such as World Health Organization, UNICEF, World Bank, as well as the charitable trusts such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and various other donor agencies work together. And under this particular Gavi, the COVAX facility is aiming to provide the vaccines to the developing countries, and Pakistan will be exploring Gavi rather than asking from the India. Now, guys, when we are talking about the vaccine diplomacy that India is going to take forward, it is in sync with the India's neighborhood first policy, which India has focused into the recent times. And guys, this vaccine diplomacy has been given a specific name, that is the vaccine matri. Now, if we talk about the vaccine diplomacy of India, it is not the first time that India is utilizing it. Earlier, also, when the pandemic was going on, India supplied the hydroxychloroquine to the neighboring countries as far as countries to USA. Then, India also supplied the remdesivir, paracetamol, the diagnostic kits for the detection of the COVID-19, ventilators, masks, gloves. All of these things have been supplied, which is nothing but the part of India's vaccine diplomacy. Now, guys, if you know, India is the pharmacy to the world because of the pharmaceutical manufacturing prowess that India is having. Now, you can see that India is capitalizing such a potential of India in order to expedite the foreign relations. We can also call that India has utilized the geo-economics into this particular regard. Guys, when we talk about geo-economics, it means that when a country uses their economy or their particular resources to further their geostrategic vendetta, then it is called as an example of leveraging geo-economics. So we can see the geo-economics also into this aspect. Guys, please utilize all these things into GS paper number 2 as well as in GS paper number 3. So that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article has been taken from the Business Standard newspaper as well as the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about the recent direction that has been given by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology to the WhatsApp with respect to thinking their privacy policy update. So, guys, first of all, let's take this particular entire issue from very scratch, and it will be important for your GS paper number 3 under the topic of the cyber security and related issues. Now, first of all, we have seen already into our newspaper analysis in much detail that how WhatsApp is changing their privacy policy, and as a part of this privacy policy, WhatsApp had provided that now it will be sharing the data generated onto the WhatsApp with their parent Facebook, and only one option has been given to the users, that either to accept such kind of thing or simply to exit from the platform. Now it has been called as all or nothing approach, and it has been criticized very severely into the India. And into this particular respect, WhatsApp recently decided that they are postponing this particular privacy policy update up till the month of May. And into this particular context, now the Ministry of Information and Technology had written to the WhatsApp that they need to completely withdraw this particular policy. Now, guys, the government had asked a series of questions from the WhatsApp as how their new privacy policy will not be infringing citizens' right to privacy. Now, guys, it has been provided very clearly by the government that any digital entity, if they want, they can carry on their business in India, but it has to do it without interfering with the rights of Indians. And, guys, here particularly the right of privacy comes into the focus, which was guaranteed as a fundamental right under Article number 21 in the Puttaswamy judgment given by the Supreme Court. Now, guys, here we can see that the government has asked that exactly what type of information is being sought by the WhatsApp. Moreover, guys, it has also been asked that why there is a differences into the privacy policy in India as well as Europe. Now, guys, when we talk about the European privacy policy of the WhatsApp, they had very clearly provided that no such information will be shared with the Facebook which has been collected by the WhatsApp. So why such double standards are being played? Then after this, it is also being asked that whether such data will be used with any other company also. After that, guys, it has also been asked that onto which particular server the Indians data is being hosted. So all these particular things have been asked. Now, guys, you don't need to go into the nitty gritties of all these particular kind of a questionnaire. Rather, you need to understand the broad trend here, that how the government, in recognition to right to privacy, is also actively pursuing this particular right. So, guys, this is all into this particular context, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this article has been taken from the Mint newspaper, and it is a very good article with respect to our GS paper number 3 under the topic of human resource or the demographic dividend of India. Now, first of all, before going into this particular article, we will be taking a background. So, guys, a few days back, India had signed the Manpower Supply Pact with the Japan. Now, this pact provides that India will be supplying the trained or skilled human resource to the Japan. Now, guys, if you know, Japan is having an aging population. Their people are turning old or gray. And into this context, India's young population can help the Japan to keep their economy moving into the direction of growth. And now the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship is further looking to capitalize this particular idea. Now, guys, there are many countries into the Europe as well as Asia which are seeing the phenomena of the graying population, and particularly 12 countries had identified by the Ministry of Skill Development. And with these 12 countries, India is looking forward to sign the Manpower Supply Pact so that India can emerge A as a human resource hub. Guys, as we have not been able to compete with the China in terms of manufacturing, we can at least compete in terms of human resource provider. Indian population has one very clear advantage, that is A, Indian population is more adaptable into the other cultures. B, India's people are having a very good knowledge of English, which again runs in favor of Indians. Then, guys, by these manpower supply pacts, India will also be able to resolve the challenge of jobs that has been mounting into India. Guys, you might be knowing that today India is facing the 45-year record low unemployment unemployment, and it is creating the frustration, anger. So such challenge will be also resolved as the people will be employed overseas. Then guys, it will also be helping in receiving the remittances. Guys, if we talk about 2020, India was one of the largest recipient of the remittances. $76 billion worth of remittances were received, though it is 9% less than 2019, and the reason was the pandemic of COVID-19, but still large number of remittances were received. Then guys, it will also be help to mitigate the demographic challenge that these countries are seeing, which don't have the young population. And into this particular thing, it will also be enhancing India's global image and will be helping in order to carve out the meaningful diplomacies on other aspects. Then guys, specific sectors have also been identified where the manpower will be supplied. It is the healthcare sector. Guys, if we see right now, the pandemic of COVID-19 has enhanced the supply of the healthcare professionals in all the fields, the paramedics, the nurses, the doctors. Then guys, the United Nation has estimated that there are 703 million people who are aged 65 plus in 2019, and guys, they need a specific care, that is the geriatric care, and Indians can provide that geriatric care. Moreover, up to 2030, 1.5 billion aged population will be there, and as they will be needing the health care, Indians can provide health services and can fill this particular gap. After that, automobile manufacturing, construction industry, hospitality, industrial machinery goods, all such sectors will be needing huge manpower supply. So guys, now India needs to work onto the skill mapping of the people so that they can be suitably accommodated. Then guys, government also needs to focus onto the bridging of the people. Now bridging means that many a times people are having a particular skill because they don't have the practical knowledge of the computers, or sometimes the practical knowledge or the functional knowledge of English is not there, they are not able to be accommodated. So these bridging courses are needed to be provided, and then the technical support with respect to the visa, with respect to clearances, etc., needs to be specifically provided by the Ministry of External Affairs. So guys, all this into this particular direction, please guys do utilize this dimension, and as a part of the skill development, human resource, this can be an important aspect. So that's it. Now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article has been taken from the Business Standard, and it is talking about the mobility industry of India into the times to come. See, just few days back, we have seen that the Tesla has confirmed that within 1 year they will be coming to the Indian market, and a lot of enthusiasm with respect to the e-mobility or electric mobility has been seen. Now, guys, government earlier also had shown an enthusiasm with respect to the e-mobility, and electronic vehicle adoption is being carried by government. For example, government had reduced the GST up to 12% onto the electronic vehicles, which is very much less seen the GST that is being imposed onto the internal combustion engine or the traditional cars. Then guys, the emission laws have also been made stringent, and to meet those emission laws, eventually people have to resort onto the electronic vehicles only. And then guys, the FAME 2, that is the faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, phase 2 has been started, into which government has taken the specific targets, that is to enhance the electronic vehicle fleet for the public transportation. Then specific duty cuts, registration cuts have been talked about, and many such directions are there. And even government has taken a target that by 2030, the electronic vehicles will be the only new vehicles that will be registered in India. Now guys, though it is very ambitious, but even if we take the practical penetration of the electronic vehicles, then it has been said that 30 to 50% of market share by 2030 will be at least be taken by the electronic vehicles. But there is a problem into this context, that is India is not having the adequate charging infrastructure for the electronic vehicles. According to a report by the McKinsey, it has been said that there is a need of 5 million public charging points, and for that particular thing, $6 billion investment is to be made. However, we are not having such large charging infrastructure. Even in Delhi, there is the need of a 3 lakh fast charger by 2030. Guys, government in 2020 budget announced that 2600 charging points will be installed onto the cities and 1700 onto the highways. Now just see, they are very less compared to the actual initial demand of the 5 million, and even this modest target has not been fulfilled due to the pandemic of COVID-19. So guys, government needs to much on to this particular aspect if actually we want to achieve the dream of e-mobility. Then guys, let's see that what could be the way forward into this particular direction. First of all, apart from itself making the charging infrastructure available, government can do some other things. For example, it can incentivize or put obligation onto the residential societies that they have to mandatorily constitute the charging infrastructure onto the lines that already they have to make the rainwater harvesting and all such kind of thing. Then guys, it has been said that the electronic vehicle charging needs to be given a status of the service, and into this particular direction, as you might be knowing that earlier the PCOs were opened where the people were just installing the telephone and they were charging. Into the same direction, the people, the shop owners, they can install the EV chargers and can charge money from the people who want to charge it. After that guys, it has been provided into the article that government also needs to keep in mind some of the practical problems also that will be coming. See, as so many large number of electronic vehicles will be flying onto the road, they can get involved into accident, and one particular vulnerability that is there into these electronic vehicles, it is that very fastly they can catch the fire, and the fire of the electronic vehicles is different from the traditional fire. So the firefighting staff, the police, they are needed to be trained that how they will be dealing with that particular kind of fire. Into this particular direction, they are needed to be provided with the non-conducting forming materials which can be used. And then guys, finally one very good aspect has been provided, that is we also need to focus on some of the alternatives. So guys, before understanding this particular point, we need to see some of the background. See, today we are adopting the electronic vehicles because we say that they are less polluting. But guys, if we see into the India's case, actually they are consuming the electricity, but who is making the electricity? They are being made by the thermal power plants, which are large number in India. And guys, these thermal power plants are actually consuming the coal. So at the end of the day, the carbon footprint has not essentially reduced. So we need to focus on two things: a, either reduce these thermal power plants and replace them with the nuclear power plants or all such kind of thing, but this particular thing will be taking much more longer time. Then guys, the other thing is that we need to explore the hydrogen fuel cell technology. Now, what is a hydrogen fuel cell? Now guys, see that as you have a traditional car, into this traditional car you are suppose using the petrol. Now as a petrol is being consumed, it is fueling your car and your car is into the motion. Now guys, into the hydrogen fuel cell cars, we will not be using petrol, we will just be using the hydrogen, and it will be further be converted into the electrical energy, and this electrical energy will be driving your vehicle. Now guys, it has been said that the end product into the hydrogen fuel cell is only the water, and it is not harmful for the environment as the traditional petrol and diesel are. So we need to focus onto the hydrogen fuel cell also into the meanwhile, as we are not able to completely convert our thermal power to the renewable energy based, solar energy based, or any such kind of thing. So guys, all these are the issues into this particular direction. Guys, so that's all about this particular article into the ecology and environment related answers. This could be a very important validation that you can make. So that is all. Now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about the India Nepal relations as how they should be carried into this phase of transition. Now, guys, if we talk about the India Nepal relations, they have not been good into the past few months, particularly because of the Kalapane dispute that happened with the India. Then, guys, the China edge is also working, by which China deliberately is influencing the Nepal against the India. It is providing them the infrastructural support, the capital support, and is trying to buy out the loyalties. Then guys, the internal politics in Nepal also drives the foreign policy response. Right now, when we talk about the Communist Party of Nepal, it is divided, and the faction which is led by the KP Sharma Oli, who is the present prime minister, he is developing anti-India sentiments, and that anti-India sentiment is also reflecting onto the foreign policy front. Guys, right now if we see, the Nepal's internal position is also not very stable, and a kind of a constitutional crisis is going on into the Nepal, where the KP Sharma Oli, he had dissolved the parliament a few months back, and this particular thing has been debated as unconstitutional. Right now, guys, the Supreme Court of the Nepal is seeing this particular matter, whether the dissolution was legal or not. And guys, into this particular context, recently the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nepal, he had made a visit to the India. and various positive initiatives have been started between the India and the Nepal. Number one, thus both the sides has decided to combat onto the COVID-19 pandemic. After that, guys, Nepal also made a request to the India with respect to the provision of vaccines, which India has also agreed. Moreover, guys, onto the development of infrastructure also, both the countries have decided to expand the Motihari Amlekhganj petroleum product pipeline to the Chitwan, and further a new pipeline has also been decided to be developed, which will connect the Siliguri to Jhapa into the Nepal. Further, guys, the connectivity has also been discussed, and into this particular guideline, the operational procedures have been decided for the passenger line that will be running between the India and Nepal from the Jayanagar to Kurtha via the Janakpur. Moreover, guys, onto the connectivity projects, the Raxol Kathmandu broad gauge railway line has also been discussed. And after that, guys, the other areas of cooperation are the cross border movement of the people and goods, and into this particular direction, integrated check post at Birganj and Biratnagar will be further helping for the movement of the people, goods, and all the cargoes. And after that, guys, onto the hydropower project front, the Pancheshwar multipurpose project has been discussed. Moreover, India has also shown the support for the Nepal's cultural heritage projects such as the Pashupati Nath riverfront development and the Bhandarkhal Garden Restoration Project. And even Nepal had supported the India's permanent seat into the United Nations Security Council. So basically, it is showing that as right now the Nepal is into a kind of a transitionary phase where the parliament has been dissolved. Then, guys, there are other issues also. For example, the abuse of the presidential power by the president Vidya Devi Bhandari. Then there is a centralization of power, the corruption, all such kind of charges are there onto which India has also shown a concern. Now, guys, into this particular light, it is provided that there could be the key takeaways which can be there because of this recent visit that has been made, and India needs to explore that how during the time of the transit also the relations with the Nepal can be maintained onto a positive light. Otherwise, the China will be taking up much advantage of this particular situation. So, guys, this is all. However, as into the times the Supreme Court will be resolving the political impasse into the Nepal, some more new developments will also be coming. So, guys, that is all. And as that thing will be coming, we will see that also. And now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article has been taken from the Indian Express, and it is talking about the Atma Vishwasi Bharat idea. See, a very brief update only here we need to take. If you know, government started with the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. Now, the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan had been understood into a negative sense. It has been understood to be something that India is going towards the self-reliance. But we need not self-reliance, rather we need the self-sufficiency. Guys, the self-reliance of India has been confused with the deglobalization trend that is going around the world. And if we talk about the Atmanirbharta today, then it gives an impression that India is going back to pre 1991 era when India was highly centered into their inward lookingness, and virtually all the interaction with the global world was shunted down. So it has been said that to give the true plan that India is taking forward, rather than Atmanirbhar, we need the Atma Vishwasi Bharat, that is the self-confident India. And the self-confident India can choose their own pace of development. Guys, into all the sphere, this particular thing would be helpful. See, if we talk about the pharmaceutical sector, we are today decoupling from China, but we don't understand that even if India is the largest pharmacy of the world, then the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is the basic raw material for the medicine, it is coming from China, and nearly 90% dependency is onto the China. So if we decouple, then it is not possible. So the Atma Vishwasi Bharat would have made much more sense, where in every sector we can take up our own policy with a highly customized, tailored approach without compromising that what actually India is doing. So, guys, this is a very good one idea which has been given. However, no need to go into too much of the intricacies, as this is the entire gist of the things. So, guys, that is all. And now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article talks about that how into the our present times, deep fakes are becoming a very disturbing phenomena. See, if we talk about the recent Capitol attack that happened into the USA, it was outcome of two of forces, that is the misinformation and disinformation. And today, the misinformation and disinformation scale has become so big that it can influence any phenomena into the world. And this particular thing has made much more problematic by the deep fakes. Guys, what are the deep fakes? These are the synthetic media, they are the audios, they are the videos which have been made by the artificial intelligence. Into these videos you can see the people doing such kind of things which they have never did. Now the deep fakes video, they have become the new challenge of the cyber world into which we are entering. Guys, the deep fake, they uses artificial intelligence to such an extent that into the times to come it will be very much problematic to tell that what is actually fake and what is actually real. And therefore the misinformation and disinformation will become even more problematic. So guys, now the responsibility is to be taken by the big tech platforms, that how they will be curtailing this misinformation and disinformation. But guys, clearly the tech giants, they are not taking any obligation into this particular direction. They say that they have a protection under the section 230 of the Communication Decency Act of 1996 into the USA. Now guys, what is this particular act? In a nutshell, I will tell you. It provides that the platforms which are hosting the users, if user are saying any particular thing, if any insightful hate speech they are giving, then the platform providers such as the Facebook, Twitter, etc., they don't have any responsibility. So therefore under this particular act an immunity has been given. So therefore the tech giants, they are not very much concerned. Guys, when we talk about the India, then in India also there is no specific legislation for the deep fakes which are becoming problematic. Guys, though there are some specific sections into the Indian Penal Code as well as the IT Act to curb such kind of speech, but no concrete provisions have been there. And already it has been seen in 2019 elections that much of the polarization was carried into election by the social media. So therefore into the upcoming elections the deep fakes can also come into the place. Though the election commission has issued a set of instructions which are to be followed during the campaigning, so that the polarization via the social media is not carried, but clearly it has been seen that such direction has not been effective into the elections. So therefore now it is needed that the government needs to come with the policy that how the deep fake can be detected and can be curtailed. Guys, in July 2020 the University of Washington and Microsoft convened a workshop as what are the themes or the challenges into the deep fakes. It identified a that deep fakes must be contextualized within the broader framework of malicious manipulated media, computational propaganda and disinformation campaign. So basically it has highlighted the deep fake as a problem. After that it has been provided that deep fakes cause multidimensional issues which requires a collaborative multi-stakeholder response. So therefore a shared responsibility has to be taken in order to curtail the deep fakes. After that it has been provided that deep fakes are hard to detect, therefore the journalists, they need to have the specific tools so that they can scrutinize the images, videos, audio recordings. They need the training as well as they need the resources. Moreover, guys, the policymakers must understand that how deepfakes can threaten the polity, society, economy, culture, and communities. So, therefore, just not we need to recognize that the deepfakes are existing, but such themes are needed to be identified. Further, it has been provided that the mere existence of deepfakes cause enough distrust that any true evidence can be disseminated as fake. So, this is also a very genuine concern which is coming. So guys, now as we are moving into the fourth industrial revolution, machine communications and all such kind of things, this problem will becoming even more prominent, and even it can cause a challenge to our internal security also. By using the deep fake videos, the communities can be made much more polarized, the riots and all such kind of things can be promoted. So guys, this is all into this particular direction. I hope you have understood, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this article has been taken from the Hindu newspaper, and here we can see that the Joe Biden, as he is assuming his presidentship, he is to introduce a bill for the 8-year citizenship. Now, this particular policy is diametrically opposite to the policy that was taken by the Trump. So, guys, Trump was clearly anti-immigrationist as he imposed the various number of bans, such as the bans on to the H-1B visa, M-1 visa, F-1 visa, as well as guys his policies with respect to the refugee also was not very much warming. Now, all such kind of things are to be reversed by the Joe Biden, and though Joe Biden has provided that he will be coming out as how into a 8-year pathway, the citizenship can be given to 11 million people who are living into the USA without the legal status. However, there can be a visible backlash from the conservative right wing groups also. But guys, it is the fastest way which has been provided to the people to gain the citizenship who are living into the USA without any legal status. So that is a kind of a good thing also. So however, you don't need to go into the nitty gritties of such citizenship policy because not important for our exam. So guys, that is all for the today's newspaper analysis. I hope that you are liking our initiative and you are finding the coverage fruitful towards your UPSC exam. So guys, that is all for today. Thank you so much.